I'm very happy to be here at this very wonderful monastery and to be gathered together with you all during today. So the theme for the day is living well, dying well. So that'll be an opportunity to explore these very significant themes. First of all, I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me clearly enough? The sound system seems excellent, but everyone at the back can hear clearly enough? Okay, very good. So communication involves both a broadcaster and a receiver. If I'm just sitting here broadcasting but people are not able to receive, it's not really a communication. So first of all, I'd like to say a few words about this, ceremonies we've just had, the determining the refuges, and taking the 8 precepts, paying respects to the Lord Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha in these traditional ways. Also the content of the morning chanting, I'll probably be addressing some of those themes during today as well. But first of all, just to talk about determining the refuges. So first of all, there's the language about the refuges is sometimes we're asking for the refuges or receiving the precepts as if there's an agent up here, like myself, who's giving you. I've got something that I'm giving you. But I feel it's more skillful to understand this is an opportunity to determine, to be guided by and to recognize that which is already within you. So it's not something I am giving to you, but rather you are giving to yourselves. That you are recollecting qualities that are already within you, that you can pay attention to and can be guided by. So that's one little piece with respect to the attitude towards this ceremony. Also, when we speak of Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, we have this magnificently large Buddha image behind us, very beautiful, very powerful and grand Buddha image. But my teacher, Luang Por Chah, would often say the Buddha image it's just a material object. That the rupa itself, the statue itself, is not the refuge, but the statue and the word Buddha, these are to remind us of where the genuine refuge can be found. And so he would emphasize, as also would be many of the other Ajahns, the teachers of the forest tradition in Thailand, they would refer to what you can call the inner qualities of the 3 refuges, the qualities that Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha refer to within our own hearts, our own minds, our own being. And so when we say the word Buddha, naturally we are referring to Gautama Buddha, the great teacher of this current age, who founded this spiritual tradition, these religious traditions and practices that we have inherited and can use, can be guided by 2,600 years later, and the other Lord Buddhas preceding him, Vipassi, Sikhi, Vesabu, Konagamana, Kakusanda, Kassapa, and the many Buddhas prior in ancient ages past. But Luang Por Chah and the other forest teachers would often emphasize that the Buddha, which is the refuge, is to be understood not just as the great teacher or teachers of ancient times past, but more directly, more effectively, more immediately. A refuge is a safe place, and a safe place for our heart, our mind, is found within us, not from an external agent, an external source. So they would often talk about taking refuge in the Buddha as choosing to be awake, to be aware, taking refuge in that Buddha quality of your own heart, your own citta. Buddha or Buddho means be awake, wake up. So when we take refuge in the Buddha, Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, that another way of phrasing that is, I choose to be awake. My intention is to wake up, to be aware, to be awake, to be mindful. When we take refuge in Dhamma, when we think of Dhamma, Dharma, often we think of the Lord Buddha's teachings and these the principles laid down in terms of meditation practices, the discipline of sila, and the many Dhamma teachings, the 84,000 Dhamma teachings contained in the Tipitaka. But also Dhamma means nature, and when we recite the qualities of the Dhamma, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, that's not just referring to the words of the Buddha contained in the Tipitaka, but rather it's referring to the ultimate reality of this present experience, this present moment, the paramata satya, the ultimate truth, ultimate reality. So when we take refuge in Dhamma, then as an internal quality, it's also meaning I choose to live in accordance with reality. I choose reality. I'm choosing to live in accordance with nature, and fundamentally intending to let go of self-centered views and perspectives, and to cultivate a Dhamma-centered or nature-centered perspective, to see things in terms of nature, of reality, rather than in terms of self-view and personal preference. Refuge in Sangha, we think of, in the words of the chanting, the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings, those who have realized the various levels of enlightenment, or on the way to realizing those 4 levels of enlightenment. But as an internal quality, what is Sangha? The word Sangha means the unified assembly, or what is a group that has come together harmoniously. So what is the quality that helps us to live harmoniously with other beings and in the world? And I would say that is the quality of virtue, sila. In a Buddha image, the Buddha is always, almost always, depicted sitting on a lotus flower, the petals of the lotus. This represents sila, that which is naturally beautiful and inspiring in the world. So when we take refuge in Sangha as an inner quality, internal aspect of our own heart, it's choosing to listen to that in us which loves the good, that in us which loves non-violence, which loves honesty, which loves unselfishness and kindness. So taking refuge in Sangha as an inner quality, that is, say, the choosing to be guided by the quality of virtue and goodness. So these are some, say, aspects of the Triple Gem. I always like to encourage us to consider, to take to heart. And if this goes against your current understanding, then I hope it's not too upsetting, confusing. But hopefully we can see this is part of the forest tradition teachings, is to try and help us to use the words and principles that we have inherited, and to see how they are really directly, immediately connected to our own life, our own heart, our own mind. A couple of things that I like to emphasize about the ceremonies. First of all, that the Buddha was very practical, and so we do things 3 times over. Buddhang sarang gacchami, dutiyampi, tatiyampi. My personal theory is that the first time is to get your mind on the subject. The second time is you're actually paying attention, and the third time is just to make sure. So that you're really making it very, very clear. So I feel this is an aspect of the Buddha's great practicality, understanding human beings. And then also the last thing I'd like to share about the precepts, the 8 precepts in particular, is the source of the 8 precepts. So this is unusual in the Tipitaka, in the Sutta teachings, because it wasn't from a dialogue the Buddha was having with anybody else, but rather it was his own internal consideration. What would be useful for the lay community to do to support their spiritual practice on the moon days, every week on the 4 quarters of the moon? And so he created the 8 precepts very deliberately as a training for the lay community. And rather than thinking of the precepts as don't do this, don't do that, that no singing, no dancing, no makeup, no supper, and celibacy, and no alcohol, and all of the no, don't. We often think of the precepts as a set of limitations, but the origin of the precepts, according to the teachings, is that the Buddha said to himself, all their lives, from the time of enlightenment until their passing away, of the arahants never deliberately take the life of another living being. Wouldn't it be useful for the lay community one day a week on the moon days to adopt the same behavior? Then they will be living as the arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. So too with the other precepts, with not stealing, with celibacy, with not lying, with not using intoxicants, not eating in the afternoon or evening, and not using decorations and amusement and distractions, and having a simple sleeping place. This is what the arahants do, and if the lay people adopt this conduct, they will be living as the arahants do, and that will be for our long-lasting welfare. So, I feel this is helpful to understand these 8 precepts. They are, in a sense, encouraging us to listen to our own pure heart, to tap into that in us which is incapable of violence, that which is honest, that which is delighting in simplicity. And so, again, I like to help introduce that as a perspective on the 8 precepts as a way of understanding their source, their purpose, and how they encourage us living from our own pure heart, rather than being distracted by the habitual distractions that we have. So then, going to the theme for today, living well, dying well, just to open things up this morning and talk about these themes. First of all, I would say that the word well has several different meanings. So living well, that well can be living in a way that is effective, living well, so using your life in an effective way, living well, using your time, your capacities in an effective way. Well also means what is healthy, and the word health is also related to the English word hale and wholeness. So living in a way that is healthy, is wholesome, and is kusala, as we would use the Pali word. So that living well is living not just effectively, but also living in a wholesome way. The other usage of the word well is living well means having a big bank account, spending lots of money, having fun, having a lot of sensory stimulation, and lots of good food and entertainments. So we don't mean, when we say living well, we don't mean that third meaning. It's the first two. So living well means living effectively and living in a wholesome way. And similarly for dying. So when we talk about living well, then what is the encouragement of the Lord Buddha with respect to this? What's a way of living effectively? What is the attitude of mind that we have towards our life that helps it to be effective and to be wholesome? And in this respect, there's I feel a very useful teaching that the Lord Buddha gave to a very, very old disciple of his called Nakula Pitta. So he was about 100 years old when he came to see the Buddha and asked this question. This is the first of the suttas in the connected discourses about the 5 khandas, the Khandavagga. So Nakula Pitta came to the Lord Buddha and said, so I'm very old, very decrepit, I'm very elderly, so what would your advice be how to practice? What's the most helpful attitude towards my life and towards the teachings? at this stage of my life? And the Buddha responded by saying, Nakulapita, it's much better to be afflicted in body and not afflicted in mind than it is to be afflicted in mind and not afflicted in the body. So essentially saying, don't worry about being old and having lots of aches and pains and being, say, so worn down by your 100 years of living. That's not the important thing. The important thing is your heart, your mind, and for your heart to be free of afflictions. And when we talk about afflictions, they simply use the word dukkha, but this would mean being free of greed, hatred, and delusion, being free of self-centered concerns, being free of self-view and defilements. So the Buddha very clearly puts the mind and the attitude above physical comfort and the health of the body. And I feel that's a very helpful teaching that he gave to Nakulapita. And it's said that Nakulapita and his wife Nakulamata had been the Buddha's parents in many, many previous lifetimes. So they often came and met him and asked questions, and so there's a very close, warm relationship between them. But this is the advice that the Buddha gives to Nakulapita. It's like better to be afflicted in body and not afflicted in mind. That's the priority. In our ordinary worldly ways of thinking, we prefer to be comfortable in the body, not afflicted in the body, make that the priority. And what our mind is doing, well, don't worry about that so much. We can take some medicine or kind of distract ourselves, but as long as I can be physically comfortable, that's the important thing. So the Buddha switches that around and said, no, that's the wrong way around. So in terms of cultivating a skillful attitude and understanding what we mean by living well or being truly alive, living effectively, there's another key teaching that the Buddha gives, which is verse number 21 from the Dhammapada, which is something of a sort of a motto for Amaravati Monastery. When we first opened the place in 1984-85, there was a little book of Lumpur Sumedho's teachings called Mindfulness, the Path to the Deathless. It was based on this Dhammapada teaching. So in this verse of the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, heedfulness, appamada, is the path to the deathless, to the amata, to the deathless realm. Heedlessness, being pamada, being heedless, being unmindful, is the path to death. The heedful, the mindful, never die. The heedless are as if dead already. So again, that's quite a blunt teaching, quite direct, but I feel it's very helpful advice for us. If we really want to be alive, if we want to live effectively, if we want to live well, then the key principle is heedfulness, mindfulness and full awareness, or mindfulness and wisdom. That is what enables us to live well. And then with the Buddha making that very potent comment here, the mindful never die, the heedless are as if dead already. So I'll talk about that a little bit more during the day, but just for now, that's a curious statement. So if I'm mindful, I'll live forever? And plainly that's not what the Buddha meant, because his own body, he lived for 80 years, and then his body, the parinibbana, the body breathed out and did not breathe in again. That was the end of the physical form of the Tathagata, the Lord Buddha. So when he says that the mindful do not die, what he's pointing to is that if the mind, the heart, is really awake and aware, then it's realizing non-attachment to as we mentioned in the chanting, rupang anatta, the body is not self, vedana anatta, feelings are not self, sanya anatta, perceptions are not self, sankhara anatta, mental formations are not self, vijnana anatta. Discriminative consciousness is not self. So that the mindful never die is that if we have really taken refuge in the Buddha, if we have really, if the mind, the heart, the citta is embodying that Buddha quality, the Buddha quality, then it is completely unattached and unidentified with the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. So this is, I was speaking about this yesterday evening at the Dhamma talk at the Nibbana Center yesterday, but just sharing this again as an important principle. So when the Buddha says the mind will never die, it doesn't mean the body won't end, but the body is not self. So just like we breathe in, we breathe out, and the awareness of the in-breath and the out-breath, it's the same awareness of the body breathing in, the body breathing out. We know the beginning of the breath, the end of a breath. The heart, which is aware of that beginning and ending, is the same as the heart which is aware of the beginning and the ending of a body, a birth of a body, the death of a body. But that awareness, which is, knowing the arising and passing of the breath, is the same as the awareness knowing the arising and passing of a body. So this is what the Buddha means when he says, the mindful do not die, because without being attached, identified with the body and all the mental activities, then when the body dies, the heart, the mind does not die with it. That quality of awareness is lokuttara, is transcendent over the five khandhas, the five aggregates. It knows the aspects of the body and the personality, the world. It's not identified, not attached to those. So when we talk about dying well, what is that referring to? So in contemplating this theme, I was reminded of a very significant teaching that the Buddha gives to his relative, a cousin of his called Mahanama. So after the Buddha had left the Sakyan kingdom and had renounced his right to the throne, to the leadership of the Sakyan community, then it was led by other relatives of his over the years, and at a certain point, then Mahanama, one of his relatives, had taken up the role of leadership of the Sakyan community. So the Buddha was back in Kapilavatthu, spending time with the Sakyan people, and Mahanama came to him and said, Venerable Sir, I'm in the role of leadership of the Sakyans, and so from time to time I get invited to the bedside of people who are dying, and I don't know what to say. I'm really out of my depth here. I'm expected to be there to give encouragement or to be helpful, but you're the great teacher, and so please give me advice. What is a useful thing to say to people who are dying at their bedside? And then the Buddha gives a series of pieces of advice. Again, it's quite a blunt teaching, not very cuddly, but quite direct and challenging in some ways. So the Buddha says to Mahanama, so Mahanama, you should ask that person, are they worried about their property and their livelihood? Is that on their mind? And if they say, yes, I'm worried about my property and my livelihood, then you should say, well, whether you worry about your property or you don't worry about your property, you're going to die anyway. So it's not very, as I said, not very cuddly, not very kind of, say, warm and fuzzy, as they say in English expression, but very direct. You're going to die anyway, so better that you let go of your worries about your property and your business, your finances. And then you should ask them, are you worried about your family, your spouse, your children, grandchildren? And if they say yes, they are worried about the spouse, the wife or the husband, the children, grandchildren, then say to them in the same way, well, whether you worry about them or you don't worry about them, you're going to die anyway. So better that you don't worry about your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, and let them go. And so then, with a few things of that nature, then encouraging to let go of all worldly attachments to material objects, to people, to relationships, and recognizing, well, this life is coming to an end, so better to let go. And letting go also will be a theme I'll explore in more detail during today. So then he changes gear a little bit and said, so then you should ask them, is your mind resolved on being reborn in the heavenly realm, the heaven of the 4 guardian kings, the 4 Chatu Maharajika Devas, the 4 guardian deities? And, so in the northern Buddhist tradition and the southern Buddhist tradition, Mahayana and Theravada, we have the same, that same heaven is referred to, the 4 great kings. And if the person says, yes, I'm resolved on being reborn in the heaven of the Lokapalas, the Chatu Maharajas, the 4 great kings, then you should say to them, well, why settle for being born in the heaven of the 4 great kings? You could be reborn in the Tavatimsa heaven, the heaven of the 33 gods. And then, why settle for being reborn in the heaven of the 33 gods? And why not aim for the heaven of the Yamadevas? And then each one makes the same kind of encouragement. Why settle for the Yamadevas? Why not aim for the Tusita heaven, the heaven of the contented, or the heaven of those who delight in creation, those who delight in the creations of others? And then finally, if they say, yes, my mind is focused on being reborn in the heaven of the Parinimita Vasavati Devas, those who delight in the creations of others, and why settle for that? Why not aim to be reborn in the Brahma world? And if they say their mind is settled upon being reborn in the Brahma world, then, very significantly, he says, why settle for being reborn in the Brahma world? Because it would be far better not to be reborn at all. So if they are aiming at being reborn in the Brahma world, instead, you should encourage them to focus upon Sakaya Nirodha. So this is, I believe this is the only time in the Pali Canon you get that word, Sakaya, like Sakaya Ditti, self-view, or the view of the real person, the real body. Sakaya Nirodha, Sak means true or real, Kaya is the body, or person. Nirodha is cessation. So he says, if such a person focuses on Sakaya Nirodha, then their state of liberation, the state of liberation of that layperson is no different from the state of liberation of a monk who has been an arahant for 100 years. So that's one of the very few places in the Pali Canon where the Buddha speaks about a layperson reaching full enlightenment. So there's not that many, but this is one of them. And so that Sakaya Nirodha, completely letting go of identification with identity, personality, with any kind of birth, letting go of any kind of urge to be reborn in any realm, to free the heart from all of those say habits of craving and attachment, grasping, identification. So I feel this is a very significant teaching, Sakaya Nirodha. So when we talk about letting go, when we talk about non-attachment to the 5 khandhas, to the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, this is all to do with developing insight, the quality of wisdom and insight, vipassana meditation, to strengthen that attribute, the quality of awakened awareness of our own hearts, to know the 5 khandhas and to not be attached, not to be identified with any of those aspects of body and mind and the material world. And through that, we have the potential, all of us, to say, free the heart from the cycles of birth and death altogether. So that's the Buddha's advice on dying well. One aspect of how to die well is, and again we'll look at that during today, and especially during the death rehearsal that we'll have this afternoon, to look at where is the mind attached. What do we take to be precious and important? What do we take to be ours, and things that are very familiar that we can't let go of, both the positive and the negative, to look at those areas of attachment, identification, and to train the heart to let go of those. So another approach to this is, one of the the styles of practice and teaching of Venerable Ajahn Chah, Luang Por Chah, was again not very cuddly, not very warm and fuzzy. So when people would come to visit his monastery, Wat Nong Bapong in northeast Thailand, I think, well, the abbot is welcoming you. Oh, I'm so happy for you to come to my monastery. I hope you use your time here very beneficially. This is what the routine is, and I hope that you have beneficial meditation, and that you can develop good qualities of your heart and your mind, and then that can help you to have a better life. You'd think, usually, I say that kind of thing sometimes when people come to visit, but Venerable Ajahn Chah's style was quite, direct and also challenging, as these teachings of the Lord Buddha in a similar way. When people would say, would come and pay respects to Luang Por Chah and say, I'd like to come and stay at Wat Bapong, he'd say, have you come here to die? Oh, no, I've come here to be enlightened, Luang Por. He said, it's better if you come here to die. Again, he was quite, like the Lord Buddha, he was very good at getting your attention by offering challenging teachings. And so what he meant was that me that wants to be enlightened, that the habits of self-view, like I want to practice, I want to get rid of my defilements, I want to become at least a stream enterer, that there's some good intention in there, but if everything is framed in terms of I and me and mine, then we're basing our practice on self-view, not on Dhamma. And the entry point for the first stage of enlightenment depends on practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. Dhamma anu Dhamma patipada, not practicing Dhamma in accordance with self-view. So even though we might be very sincere, very determined, I really want to do something good with my life, and I've got so many defilements, I'm so selfish, I'm really lazy, I'm busy, I'm so busy, I'm stressed, and I get really angry. I need to get rid of all of that. I need to develop concentration and wisdom and to be totally liberated. That's what I need. So, yes, a list of very good qualities, noble intentions, but it's sort of been hijacked by I have these qualities, I need to get rid of the defilements, I need to get the wholesome qualities. I. So, the more that our life is a possession, we feel like we're the owner of this life, and I am practicing, and I am getting somewhere, or I am not getting anywhere, then the more that our noble and sincere efforts will be leading towards more dukkha, more suffering, rather than to genuine liberation. So that when Luang Por Chah said, have you come here to die? It's like, is there a readiness to let go of all that self-centered thinking? And in the forest tradition, he's not the only teacher who speaks in this way. And in the Thai language, maybe there's a few Thai speakers here, they say, dai kon dai. So the Thai word for dying is dai. So very convenient, same as the English. Dai kon dai means to die before you die. And that's a way of summarizing the practice, so letting the self-centered habits die before your body dies. Dai kon dai, so die before you die. And interestingly enough, in the Christian tradition, one of the famous Christian saints of the Middle Ages, Saint Teresa of Avila, had a very similar expression, a kind of cryptic motto that she had, very, very similar, almost identical, which hopefully you can understand, which was, she said, die before you die, so that when you die, you won't die. It sounds a bit mysterious, but to open that up a little bit, so die before you die, so let go of your ego-centered habits before your body dies, so that when you die, when your body dies, you won't die with it. Then there won't be that attachment and that the sense of loss and sort of disaster that people ascribe to the death process. So die before you die, so that when you die, you don't die. She probably said it in Spanish, but that's the English version, since she was from Avila in Spain. So these are some of the other principles. And maybe the last thing to share, because when we thought of the theme for today as living well, dying well, I'm very impressed with the number of people who signed up for this. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. But talking with the Buddha Dharma Foundation folks and the suggestions for what theme we might have for today, then Sister Bita was saying, oh, people are obsessed with happiness. They just want to maximize their happiness, and so those programs are really popular. People don't want to think about death and dying, but again, the Lord Buddha was an extraordinarily skilled teacher, of amazing capacity to understand human nature, and he realized that just by emphasizing the positive and trying to maximize the positive, you're not really doing the best that you can. But we know we all want happiness, but what is it that's getting in the way of that happiness? And so that he, realizing how the mind works, he realized it was better to put attention on the attachments that we have that obstruct happiness and freedom, and understand those obstructions and let them go, and then happiness will be the natural result. If we focus on the idea of happiness or trying to get that, and it's me trying to be happy, so everything will be good for me and my family and my people, then we can be pushing aside and not noticing the many obstructions, the things that are really, say, causing difficulties and burdens in our life. So, the last teaching I'll share with you before we have the guided meditation is what is called the 5 subjects for frequent recollection, which in the teachings, it's in the numerical discourses, Book of the Fives, as you'd expect. He said, both for the monastic community and the lay community, people should reflect every day, Jara Dhammomi Jaran Anatito. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. So starting with the habit of self-view, of the I, where we begin. Okay, if I'm attaching to the body, I am of the nature to age. This body is aging. Bayadi Dhammomi Bayading Anatito. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. There's a body, the mind is attached to it, identified with it. It will get sick. There'll never be a day where they shut the hospitals because nobody's getting ill. I predict. I don't have any psychic powers, but I would predict that's the case. That the medical schools will close because nobody's getting ill anymore, so doctors are not necessary. I don't think that's ever going to happen. We are of the nature to sicken. That's the way nature operates. Marana Dhammomi Marana Manatito. I am of the nature to die. Again, speaking from the basis of self-view, this is where we begin. Yeah, this body is aging. It will sicken, and it will die one day. There will be an in-breath, there will be an out-breath, and no more in-breath. That's the case for every single one here, right? That's not a mystery, but every single body here, one day, will breathe out and not breathe in again. When we come into a room like this, a beautiful shrine room with a great Buddha image, and gather together with our friends, we don't think, oh, every one of us is going to die one day. That's not the first thought. Look, this is my friend, or where shall I sit? Or there's my other friend is over there. That's how we relate to coming together in a group of people. But the Buddha is saying, don't just look at each other in that way. This one I know, this one I don't know, this one I like, this one I don't like. But to instead recognize, we are all of the same nature. We are sisters and brothers in aging, sickness and death. Every single one of these bodies, one day, will breathe out and not breathe in again. Fact. So our egos, our self-view is like, is a bit threatened or challenged by that. Like, oh, let's not think that way. But the Buddha, why did he encourage this as a frequent contemplation to be reflected on every day by the lay community and the monastic community? Also, the other two of their list, all that is mine, all my possessions, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. My material possessions, my faculties of thinking, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, my reputation, all the things that I think of as mine will go. Everything is leaving. Again, that's not a problem or something not working. That's nature as it operates. All that is mine, all that I think is mine, again, on the basis of self-view, that's the acknowledging the experience. And then the last of the five is, I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. So again, starting with the point of self-view. But if the mind turns towards all that and says, look at those habits of attachment, look at all those I ams, and see how that works, and that it's deliberately challenging to self-view, to the ego, but at the same time it's liberating to the citta. It's like, oh, of course, how could it not be this way? Duh, as we would say in the modern age. Yeah, well, of course it's that way. How could it be otherwise? So the ego is threatened, but the heart is relieved at the same time. So one way of relating to Buddha Dharma then is its natural flavour is bittersweet. Bitter for the ego, for self-view, and sweet to the heart itself. So the Buddha encouraging these five subjects for frequent recollection, it's not because he wanted us to be depressed or anxious. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, it will become otherwise. Don't say that. I've got to hang on to my things. But he wasn't being malicious or unkind or cruel. He's saying, look, what we think of as ours is not really ours. What we're really holding on to, what we're attached to, it's not really who and what we are. Look. And by encouraging that frequent reflection, that looking, then by looking directly, by encouraging awareness of the habits of self-centered thinking, then the heart can see beyond that and realize, oh, right, rupang anichang, the body is impermanent. Rupang anatta, the body is not self. Oh, right, of course. So by turning towards those qualities and being aware, then the view expands and broadens, and they can be related to in a different way. If we ignore them, and we don't want to talk about death and dying, we don't want to talk about aging and sickness, that's other people some other time, not me, then we by pushing it away and ignoring it, mysteriously we strengthen it. Let's not talk about that. And sometimes it's even considered superstitious. Like, don't talk about death, you'll invite problems into the house. So the Buddha is going against those kind of superstitions and saying, no, if we ignore these qualities, push them away, think, why me, or this isn't fair, then we make those into powerful, say, burdens and causes of stress in our life. If instead we make them front and center and say, the body is of the nature to age. Of course, we're all older than we were when we came into the hall this morning. It's now 9:10, so we're at least an hour older than we were. Time is passing. So the Buddha is encouraging a realism, taking refuge in Dhamma, in reality, and then through that realism, then the heart can see beyond those say, habits, or the say, ordinary way, the ignorant way that the heart mind relates to aging, sickness, and death, and loss, and karma. So that it's a great kindness of the Buddha encouraging us to pay attention. Like a good doctor saying, well, there's good news and bad news. Which would you like first? If a doctor only says only gives you the good news, I'd say they're not a very good doctor. You want to know the whole story. You want to know what the picture is. So I'll leave my opening reflections there for now. So we'll have a period of guided meditation. So please do stretch your legs for a little bit, and then we can sit down and have a meditation period.